Today marks the Shloshim, a 30-day period of mourning for Rabbi Yisroel Halpert of blessed memory, Yisroel Yaakov ben David Chaim Zechrona Levracha. We hope and pray that the entire family, Rivka, the children, Esti, Zach, David, Chavi, Yair, Yisroel's mother, Ruthie, Yisroel's sister and brother-in-law, Adina and Aryeh, Yisroel's in-laws, Rabbi Harold and Toby Einseidler, as well as Sarah, Wayne, Izzy, and Jillian. We hope and pray that all of you be blessed with comfort and strength in the days ahead. The Navi tells us about a Kohen Gadol, a high priest named Eli, who officiated while the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was in Shiloh. Eli's children, Chafni and Pinchas, were wicked individuals who mistreated people when they came to serve Hashem in the Mishkan. Because of their maltreatment, of a person's experience when they come to serve God in the house of Hashem, the impact the experience will have upon them is very much determined by how they are treated by the people who supervise the service. If they are treated well, they will have a meaningful experience and want to come back. If not, they will choose not to return. Over the past 2 decades, there were certain personalities that came to define the very experience of coming to the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Certain individuals who left an indelible mark on the shul atmosphere. These individuals, their character became one with the Fifth Avenue Synagogue experience. Yisroel Halpert, the ritual director of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, was one of those individuals. He became part of the very fabric of the shul. Yisroel attended each and every service. He oversaw and conducted many parts of the davening. He sat by the entrance and greeted people as they walked in. He was a warm and friendly face that the masses could relate to. He would joke with people, ask how they were doing, and remind them about their yortzites. His identity was fused with the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Until this very day, people who have attended services in the past still enter the shul and ask where Yisroel Halpert is. He most definitely left his mark and touched the lives of many of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue congregants. Yehei Zechro Baruch, may his memory be blessed. A Shloshim serves as an opportunity to hear from some additional speakers who did not have the ability to speak at the funeral. And this evening, we have a number of presentations.
Tonight's first speaker is Rabbi Roth. I think Rabbi Roth was the rabbi who hired Yisroel, and it's a great honor to hear from Rabbi Roth tonight. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Yeah, why not? I don't know. It's not, maybe it's not necessary. What?
You okay?
Yeah.
I need for the Zoom.
Oh,
I can hold the microphone.
no.
Okay.
Okay, great. It's all right. I'll manage. Let me begin by noting that I did not hire or engage Israel Halpert, Zichrono Livracha. I merely participated in the committee, but they had my enthusiastic vote in support. According to an explanation in the Siddur, we are told that Israel has two names. That is to say, the passage in that portion of the Siddur, which is pre-Psuke de Zimra, had certain prayers and certain declarations, and the one paragraph speaks about Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and then we are told that Israel had two names given to them by God, Yisroel and Yeshurun, and further, Shemeya Havascha She'ahavta Oso, because of the love that you loved Yaakov, Jacob, Umisimchascha Shesamachta Bo, and because the joy that you experienced because of him, Karosa Shemo Yisrael v'Yeshurun. You called his name both Yisrael and Yeshurun. There's a difference between the two names insofar as meaning is concerned. The Torah defines the meaning of Yisrael, Ki sarisa im Elohim ve'emanoshim v'tuchal. Yaakov, who became Yisrael, is called Yaakov, he called Yisrael, because Yisrael, according to the Torah account, means Sarisa im Elohim and im Emanoshim vetuchal, that he was successful and victorious in his struggles with angels. You probably know the story. I don't have to repeat it for you. And with human beings, such as Lavan and Esav. Yaakov, Yeshurun, means something else. It comes from the word Yashar, and it means the doing that which is right. These are not two descriptions of different segments of the Jewish community. Ideally, they are combined in one person. The best example of the integration of these two qualities is the Yeshivot Hesder, the combined Torah and military institutions in Israel, who on the one hand are devoted to learning. The goal of the Yeshivot Hesder, as you know, is teaching Torah. And secondly, they are required to spend a certain number of years in service at Sahal. These combine both Vatuchal, victory, accomplishment, and also Yeshurun. They serve, they do that which is right. And doing that which is right for the patriarchs means that they are acting according to the prescriptions of Torah. Yisroel Halpert was a person as an individual who combined Torah and righteousness. Let me say that he was a man who wanted victory in the sense that he was outstanding in all that he did. I'm not going to speak about all of his virtues. He had many of them. I'm focusing on one, because that is the reason for which I admired him the most. So he was the best among those who are doing his kind of work in the synagogue. As you noted, it was noted already, I was a member of the search committee to engage a ritual director. The principal task of the ritual director is to read the Torah, and I was impressed by the accuracy and the beauty of his reading. He was outstanding. When he came here on the Shabbos to function in the synagogue as a ritual director, he was truly outstanding. But he displayed not merely that he was exceedingly qualified, but also a certain quality of character. He had a love for Torah. It was clear the emphasis that he placed on the accuracy of the reading of the Torah. And when he got through with the reading that day, I was delighted to encourage the search committee to engage him, to say and to tell them that this is a man that fits into and belongs in Fifth Avenue Synagogue. He also displayed unqualified love for Torah by undertaking the teaching of a class in Parshat HaShavua every Shabbat afternoon, which a ritual director normally does not do. But most impressive was his determination to receive smicha and to widen his knowledge of Torah. I saw the document that he received from the Lubavitcher Torah institutions as testing to his knowledge of large sections of the Code of Jewish Law, the sections that are required for learning by students who want to become ordained, and especially in the classic yeshivas. I wonder why he did it. And I contemplated the various possibilities, the various options. And I concluded there was none other than the fact that he loved the Torah. And he showed that love in his lectures and in his performance. He made a huge contribution to Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and our membership was filled with affection, respect, and admiration for him, all of which qualities, all of which sentiments I shared. Yehei Zechro Baruch, may his memory be a blessing.
Amen.
Okay.
Our next speaker is someone who attends shul regularly, and Yisroel had a great relationship with him, and Rivka is very close to him. We call upon Andy Lowinger to say some words.
To follow Rabbi Roth is always a Herculean task. He's my hero, actually. I never heard him speak from the pulpit when it didn't include Torah. Never. And it was an inspiration to all of us. When I stand here thinking about Yisroel, I can't help but have one picture in my mind. And that's my entering the shul. And there's Yisroel coming towards me, smile on his face, twinkle in his eyes, and I know what I'm in for. And sometimes when you come into shul, grouches like me, you're thinking about one problem, another thing, or the day that passed, the day that's coming. And you know, this is what New York is made of. You want to stay in that darkness. That's the way we're made of, After all, if we can't think about all the troubles we have, what will we do all day? And Yisroel understood this. So he would come over to me and he would say something humorous, sometimes a little bit hysterical, but it worked, as much as I resisted, I couldn't help. I left an extra spring in my step. All of a sudden, I forgot about the nonsense I was thinking about, smile on my face. It worked for everybody. But you all know that, because that was the aspect of his personality that stood out. What I'm not so sure you all realize is that, yeah, it was part of his personality. But it was 365 days a year. And he's a human being like all of us. And we all have challenges in life. We have days that don't go very well. We have problems in life. So we can't always be smiling and happy. And yet we never saw any other face of Yisroel but that smiling, happy face. More so, he was not just smiling and happy, he was going out of his way to make you and me and everyone happy. Now that's not all personality. We'd like to write it off to personality. It's more than that. It's a special neshama that is interested in you, not just me. That's the hardest thing for people to do. And he achieved that level of relationship between Ben Adam and Chavero that is really at the pinnacle. But I'd like to take a moment to speak and really carry on a point made by Rabbi Roth about a part of his personality that never got total credit. When I came here 20 years ago, I was delighted when I walked into the shul to meet Rabbi Roth, scholar, a Talmud Chacham, and one of the warmest persons you could ever meet. And then I see we have a world-class chazan who's not only, forget about his singing attributes, he's spiritually and religious and devoted and understands the Perish Amilim. It's not as simple as you think. It doesn't exist. I came from an insular area in Brooklyn. Yeah, okay, but came to the big city. It was very refreshing. So everything's fine, right? Except that if you understand how an Orthodox shul operates, it's 365 days a year, 24/7, something's going on. Now, so the rabbi, very important. The chazan, very important. The most important person who holds the pieces together is the ritual director. Because you have a shachris, you have a mincha, you have a mayrut, you have a musaf, you have a yartzeit, you have certain tefillahs that nobody wants to participate in. Okay? You have a slichus for Yom Noron that nobody can even pronounce the words. You have a slichus for a fast day that nobody wants to even start. They're fasting already at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're tired. You have kinnis, you have eicha. The first Shabbos I was in Fifth Avenue Synagogue, I'm sitting in back there and I see this 30-something ritual director approach the bima. So I said, let's see what this is all about. He starts to read the Kriya. And I can tell you, I was transported. Really. The absolute flawless way in which he read. Not a mistake in the Kriya is one thing. Not an addictive nothing. And the cantillation, which nobody was paying much attention to, but if you paid attention, and it happened to be a difficult parsha. I don't remember which parsha it was. And I said, something, there's something here with this individual. This is not simple. This doesn't happen. As Rabbi Roth pointed out, he picked up on it also. It doesn't happen. This doesn't happen just from repeating the parsha. This was a focus and an attention to detail and to perfection, which was what he stood for. And then I watched that he davened Shachris, Mincha, Myra, Musaf. He knew all the tunes. He knew the Nesachim. He knew the Minhagim. He knew the halachas, inside out. And I saw how he was called upon in a minute's notice to do things. And I remember when the chazan was indisposed for a period of time, he stepped in like a champion and never once said, look what I'm doing, stepped in like a champion. And how many times did I come to Mincha and he's schlepping some guy in because it's the middle of the summer at 8:15 at night, not exactly opportune time. And then all of a sudden they say, Yisroel, Rabbi's not here today. We need someone for Devar Torah. So what does he do? We have Chumash for 2 minutes. He gets up to speak. You figure you're just going to say something. He spoke scholarly, intelligently, but more importantly, always bearing in mind that he had to leave a spiritual message for the people. He understood that the people that are there needed to be lifted up. You know, you want to know where it came from. I'll tell you where it came from. It came from the background that he had and the dedication and the understanding. Rabbi Roth asked, why did he go for smicha? He came from a background where the spirituality and the depth of religious observance was drilled into him. And he understood that in Fifth Avenue Synagogue, he had a great challenge. And he was the supreme expert in dealing with that challenge. The challenge was to take everybody in, which is what a shul should do, okay? And he was the welcoming committee. But the shul itself has an obligation to its history, to its ancestors, to its tradition, to maintain the Orthodox tradition. We are modern Orthodox, which means not that we modernize Orthodoxy, but we are Orthodox people in a modern society. And the shul is run according to the Shulchan Aruch, as Rabbi Roth pronounced the first time I met him. And he maintained that. And he maintained man and his fellow man. Some are specialists in dealing with their relationship with God. He was both. He was a person who was dedicated to his fellow man and dedicated to his God and to his tradition. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
Call upon Yisroel's mother-in-law, Toby Einsader, to please say some words.
Thank you, Rabbi Babbage. Thank you, Rabbi Roth. Thank you, Mr. Gold. Thank you, Cousin. Okay. I hope I get through it. Last week's Parsha talked about special pasuk, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How beautiful are your tents, O Yaakov. How beautiful are your shuls. How beautiful is your Bet HaKnesset. How beautiful is your synagogue. Rabbi Yisroel Halpert, to me, he was my sruli. He loved the shul. He loved shul life. He loved taking care of the shul, putting away the Sidurim, putting away Chumoshim, making it ready for Shabbos morning. He loved to daven. He loved putting melodies to the davening. I just loved it. He would take daily songs that we know and put it to Adon Olam or put it to the Kedusha. And it was just wonderful. He loved to lay in. Like you said, he loved the Torah so much. He loved people. He was always talking to everyone. I have the good fortune of living near my children, Yisroel and Rivka and my grandchildren. And every Friday night they would come over for Shabbat dinner. And we were all there ready. The table was set, the food is ready, but of course, Yisroel was not there. He was late. And he was getting the shul ready. He was putting the Siddurim away, the Chamashim away. He said he had to talk to certain people. But then we heard the knock at the door, and there was Yisroel standing at the door, and Yair used to run over and give him a big hug. And then my husband, Rabbi Einstein, said, okay, now we can start. Now we start. And Yisroel always had his place at the table. We have two heads to our table. One is for my husband, and one was for Yisroel. And made Kiddush. Yisroel always made hamotzi in a special way. Where's Ruth? A special way. Thank God, he loved my food. And I think especially the potato kugel, they used to say. And I have really a small kitchen. And he used to say, all this food is coming out of the kitchen. You couldn't imagine how so much food could come out of that small kitchen. So one day, one Friday night, I go in the kitchen, and Yisroel has his head in the refrigerator. And I said, Yisroel, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for the black hole that has all that food in there. There's got to be there someplace. Yisroel and I had a special relationship. He even said to me, there's so many mother-in-law jokes, but I can't think of one that I could say about you. It was very special. We had said jokes together. We used to do so much divrei Torah at the table. Friday nights. He sang so many zmiros at the table. I used to always ask him about politics. I always enjoyed his opinions on what was going on in the government and in the city. And it was just a lot of fun to talk to him. It was so great. He was full of life. He loved life. And I feel that all of us, for me and for all of us, we should learn from Yisroel how to appreciate everything that we have and to be kind and friendly to one another and to enjoy life. We were so fortunate to have Yisroel in our life. We, my husband and I, considered Yisroel our son. He was not a son-in-law. He was so good and cared about us. He used to come and visit me in the office. He was just passing by and just wanted to see that I was okay. We will miss Yisroel terribly. And we pray that his neshama will have an aliyah in Gan Eden.
So Yisroel always loved when his in-laws came to Fifth Avenue, but the person who was most excited when she would come for Shabbos was Yisroel's mother. He would always give us a heads up, and Yisroel's mother has agreed to speak this evening. We know it's hard, but we really appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope it didn't break it. Good evening. I'm not a public speaker. And I was thinking a long time whether I'm going to do this, but I think I will. My son, Rabbi Yisroel Halpert, or Yisroel, as we all called him, was a unique. I think he was a unique, and I think you all do think he was a unique. He shall not pass this way again. Nobody shall be like him again, because he was a unique. And that's a person who is very special and is very different. And that's what he was. He cared about all of you to an unbelievable degree. Whenever I was with him, he only spoke about the people in this shul. How much he cared about each individual one of you, you don't even know that. I'm always knocking this over. What to do about your yard site, what to do about each person when it was their time to be called up to the Torah, who needs a parasha being read that Shabbos. Each one, he went to them personally to speak to them. It was the most important thing besides his family, naturally, besides Rivka and besides the children. But I think his legacy should be that everyone in the shul, all the people here today, and all the members of Fifth Avenue Synagogue should keep the legacy of kindness, understanding, and caring about each other alive forever in the shul, because I think that that's what he actually wanted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow. The next speaker is the secretary of the board, Lauren Merkin, who has become really close to Rivka and has done a lot for the Halpert family and is very close to the Halpert family. And she's agreed to address us this evening.
I truly am honored to have been asked to say a few words. And what I'd like to say, and what I'd like to focus on, is Yisroel's effect on others. Heard a lot about Yisroel, but I'd like to talk about what he did for each of us. I was struck by this most profoundly when I was at the Shiva. Despite the incredible and weighty sadness, his children conveyed an incredible joy and delight in life. There was laughter, there were stories, and this quality in themselves, they attributed 100% and vociferously to their father, who had warmed their lives with humor and support. All of us who knew him and encountered him lightened up when Shloshim came around. No matter how we were feeling, no matter how annoyed we were with the service, we lightened up and started to enjoy the Kiddush more. We appreciated life more, and he taught us how to do that. And he often made us laugh out loud. Yisroel brought out the best in all of us. But I must say a few words specifically about Rivka. It is impossible to express the devotion, care, love, courage, and emunah that Yisroel brought out at Rivka and that she gave to her family and to life. Rivka is a model to all of us, and perhaps she sets the bar too high for us to even dream of achieving. Yisroel brought out the best in all of us because he showed us in his own life to find joy and humor and to share love and to have a trust in God. His life was a blessing, and may his example and his memory be a blessing as well.
Thank you so much, Lauren. When we opened the shul in August, after being closed, I think it's since March, we needed 10 people that could commit to come every day to davening. Some of them are here, Henry Zimmit, Stephen, Shalom, etc. But David Halpert really stepped up to the table, and he was here every day, Shachris Mincha Maariv, and it's a great honor to have David address us at his father's Shloshim.
I have many stories about my dad, from day trips to sitting next to him in synagogue and a lot more. But there's one story that I'll share which proves how much he cared. One day in the summer of 2019, he took me, Yair, Javi to a ball game at Yankee Stadium. But what I saw made me open my jaw. My dad got my name mentioned. He paid $10 to congratulate me on my high school graduation. It appeared on one of the scoreboards for us to see. The game was great. We sat in the legends. It was fun. The Yankees won at the end. Afterwards, I went to summer camp. Dad eventually told me the news that made me cry. Then after many months of battling, he passed away. I lost him. We all lost him. I took some time after his passing, and I thought to myself about the time that he passed. 4:10 p.m. That was the time on a Saturday that he passed. I thought about the first number 4. In my mind, there are 4 reasons that made my dad who he was, which I'll forever adore. The first reason is that, like myself, he was a big fan of sports. The second reason is he was a man who always cared for Shabbos. The third reason is that he's hardworking, caring, respecting, and a loving person to everyone around him. And this fourth reason, he was in for the jokes. He loves listening to jokes, telling jokes, and he was born on the first day of April. Which makes sense. Dad, you know we all miss you and love you very much. Thanks again for being you.
Next speaker really needs no introduction. She runs our mikvah. She also runs our youth groups. And we've really gotten to see her over the last 2 years deal with a difficult situation. And just what an amazing person she is. So Rivka Halpert, please.
Well, welcome, everyone. These words were so together because Yisroel is not here to help me. He knew exactly what to say and how to say it. October 20th, 1996 was my first date with my Shloshim. How did we meet? The Judaic Studies principal from Park East State School had a friend in Borough Park who knew Shloshim's parents. When I heard he was from Borough Park, me, growing up in the city, assumed everyone in Borough Park was a chassid. So I thought a chassid was going to come to my door, but the shadchan thing reassured me that this wasn't the case. My mom at the time had 2 tickets to a Broadway matinee, and she told me that she would give it to me for my next date. October 20th was the first night of the Yankees World Series, and there was no way Shloshim would go out at night. So he was delighted that I had 2 tickets to a Broadway matinee. When Shloshim came to my door, I was pleasantly surprised. We went out to lunch at my most favorite dessert and then to the show. We had a fantastic time. When he brought me home, the phone rang, and a friend of mine just got engaged and was hoping I could attend her l'chaim in Brooklyn. Shloshim offered to take me. While I was freshening up, he joined my brother in the living room. Football was on, and he asked my brother what was going on. From the kitchen, my mom was giving him play-by-play of everything going on in the game. My brother told him that my mother was a big football fan. When Yisroel heard this, he said, "Oh, baby." So I guess he fell in love with my mother first. When I finally returned home from the l'chaim, my mom said this, and this was the only time she ever said this: "This is a guy for my Rivka." And she was right. We spoke all the time and went out often. We got engaged after a couple of months, and then on June 29th, 1997, we got married at Park East Synagogue. Tomorrow would have been our 24th wedding anniversary. When we first got married, Yisroel was a travel agent. He was also a Baal Koreh in the Sephardic shul in Borough Park. When my parents went away on Shabbosim, he would fill in for my dad and read the Torah. He also davened and read the Torah on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur at the parallel services at Park East Synagogue. One Shabbos, David Yagoda, who was chairman of the board at Fifth Avenue Synagogue, was at Park East and approached Yisroel that they needed a ritual director at Fifth Avenue Synagogue and wanted him to try out for the position. Yisroel wasn't so sure, but my father told him, "Don't be a fool. You listen to this man." So I think that was the only time you really, I believe he interviewed with Rabbi Roth, Professor Bill Schwartz, and Cantor Malavani and got the job. Yisroel grew into his role of ritual director of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. He loved being on the bima, whether it was reading the Torah or leading services. He put his whole heart and soul into everything he did. Everyone could feel his excitement. Yisroel also enjoyed teaching his weekly classes, teaching bar mitzvah lessons, proofreading weekly and monthly bulletins, purchasing the lulavim and esrogan, and shopping for matzot. Yisroel was always happy to help anyone with whatever they needed. Yisroel had to be at Fifth Avenue Synagogue daily for all the minyanim. Many times he would stay and wait for me until I was finished working at the mikvah to walk me home. How I miss those times. Yisroel enjoyed planning our family vacations, arranging places that we would enjoy. Niagara Falls was one of our favorites. He loved going to simchas. He was the life of the party. When it came to our own simchas, we wanted everyone to be happy with us because we are all family. I often tell my children how lucky we are. Not only do we have our own wonderful family, we also have a Fifth Avenue Synagogue family, a Park East Synagogue family, and a Ramaz family. We feel so blessed to have you all part of our lives. I want to take this time to thank all of you for your love and support for the past 2 years. I'm forever grateful. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for helping me take care of Yisroel and my family. I love you all so much. Esty and Zach, David, Javi, and Yair, Dad loves you so much. He loved his whole family. Yisroel, I've been missing you a long time. Ever since you came out of surgery, I was hoping and praying that you would come back to us. But Hashem had other plans. I know you'll always be watching over all of us. You're just watching from the second floor. Thank you.
I just wrote some notes. I was thinking today, the first time when I found out of Shirley's illness, we actually finally had our successful golf outing, and Yisroel said, I need to speak to you privately. I said, Yisroel, can it wait till tomorrow? He said, no, it couldn't. And he had told me about his health condition, and he was very reassuring, telling me he's going to be back in a couple of weeks and how to run the shul when he's not there. And, that was Yisroel. He was always optimistic. always caring, and he was really focused on every little aspect on the shul. Many mentioned tonight, but there was someone that came to the shul last week, and he asked, "Where's Yisroel?" And I told him, and he started crying. And Yisroel definitely touched all of our members. He touched all of our guests. He was by far the most popular guy in the shul by 100 miles. The last 2 years being president of a shul, every conversation with any donor or any congregant, the first question was, "How's Yisroel?" He was the priority of the shul for the last 2 years. I want to mention one thing about the family that everyone's here, but I didn't know Ruthie, I didn't know the Einstaders, I didn't know Rivka as intimately, but the family is an amazing family, and they're Hakar Satov, and working with them over the last 2 years, they're just extraordinary people. Rabbi Babbage spoke at the funeral, and as did Rabbi Kermeyer, who's here this evening. And I just want to say that Rabbi Babbage, behind the scenes, as a president, you get to see a rabbi in different capacities, but he has really stepped up in a huge way with the Halperts, and I wanted to thank him publicly this evening. The last time I saw Yisroel, Rivka will remember, Yisroel's birthday was Pesach. So we said to Yisroel, "What would you like for your birthday?" He said he wanted an ice cream cake from Haagen-Dazs. I said, "Yisroel, Pesach, I can do many things, but I can't get you a Haagen-Dazs ice cream Pesach. You want chocolate and vanilla." So we had a little party for him in the park outside. And I think that was the last time, Rivka, that I saw Yisroel. And he was just so appreciative and so happy. And the way Rivka dealt with him was really, really special. Not to be repetitive, but Yisroel really did genuinely care about everyone. And I think that's why people generally care about him. He generally really cared about the shul. His mind was alert until the end. He would ask me questions like, he was sharp. He knew everything, haftorahs and aliyahs and yard sites and kiddushes. He would remind me of every little detail and make sure I never missed a beat. Also want to thank Yair publicly also for helping us davening sometimes and laning. It's very appreciated. I think another thing about Yisroel, and I think Andy or others mentioned, Yisroel knew how to make people laugh. He was definitely not uptight. And as Andy said, New York, now that Andy's in Florida, he can say it, but New York is an uptight place. But Yisroel really, made a difference in people's lives, and he knew how to make people at ease, which is a real skill and a real talent. Rabbi Babbage, I think, mentioned at the funeral about Yisroel. Rabbi Babbage has actually stepped up and taken on many of Yisroel's responsibilities. And one thing we couldn't get right, the Lovim and Esrogim. Yisroel would custom, the Lovim Esrogim for every member. He would store them at night, and then when they would come to shul, they would hand them a lulav and esrog. There's no customer service like that, and there never will be. Yisroel would read the Megillah for so many people. When he was sick, we would get phone calls, and we would realize, oh my gosh, how did he do this? How did he do that? Yisroel was always, as I said, reminding me about yard sites, aliyahs. This guy's going to be insulted. This guy needs this. This guy needs that. He tried to save me from many enemies, but I still try to find them. Yisroel would also proof the bulletin, which Rachel has helped tremendously with, but he would proofread Rabbi Babbage's speeches. The monthly bulletin could not go out until Yisroel Halpert proofread it. Sheila knew that, and he was great. He would always find mistakes, and he will be sorely missed in every way, but that's just something that I wanted to mention that probably no one knew that he ever did. I remember Yisroel at Esti's wedding. I remember how happy he was, and it's important. I'm just so happy that Yisroel was able to be there, and it was really a great evening for him. I also want to say that Yisroel, and Rivka can correct me if I'm wrong, but Yisroel stayed positive until the end. I remember the last time he was still up to date on all the scores. He knew scores for any sports better than anybody, but his mind was 100%. There's one thing Rabbi Roth mentioned, which I think is really important, but the board worked with Yisroel, and Rabbi Lankry, I think his father just passed away this week, and he was going to speak tonight, but Yisroel got smicha, and he worked really hard to get it. And unfortunately, he got it late in life, but he really, he's Rabbi Yisroel Halpert, and I just want to make sure that we don't forget that. We spoke about, Rabbi Roth spoke about the classes. I think the class that Yisroel loved the most, Rivka, was his Tu B'Av class, which I think he gave last year also when he was sick. That was another thing about Yisroel. Even when he was sick, he was still giving classes. So, tonight is a Shloshim that we're marking. It's great to have so many family members speak. There'll be a yard site. There'll be a yearly yard site for Yisroel. He will never be forgotten. And I'm calling upon Harold Anstadter, his father-in-law, who was very close to Yisroel, who's going to say a Mishnah, if that's okay. And I also want to thank, I knew for Yisroel we'd have a great turnout, but I want to thank everyone for coming tonight.
I delivered my eulogy at the funeral. But tonight I will teach a Mishnah. And the reason why we have a Mishnah at these occasions is that if you look at the word Mishnah, it's spelled Mem, Shin, Nun, Hey. Just transpose the letters is Nun, Shin, Mem, Hey, which spells Nishama. That we believe as we study the Mishnah, the soul of of Yisroel Halpert will be elevated in Gan Eden. I chose a Mishnah from the tractate Bikurim. Bikurim are the first fruits, and indeed, Yisroel was our first fruits. And the Mishnah begins. I chose the Mishnah in Parak Shlishi, the 3rd chapter, Mishnah Aleph, in Masechta Bikurim. Mishnah poses the following question: Ketzad mafrishim es habikurim? How does one separate the first fruits to eventually bring it to the city of Jerusalem and give it to the Kohen? And the Mishnah responds by saying, Yored Adam l'sof sadehu. A man goes into his field, and he sees a fig that is starting to blossom forth. Eshkol should be care, or a cluster of grapes that's coming out. Rimon should be care, or pomegranate that's starting to grow. Koshero bigemi v'omer harayel bikurim. So he ties it with a string or a ribbon of some sort, and he proclaims, these are the bikurim, these are the first fruits. Notice the Mishnah mentions 3 fruits: figs, grapes, and pomegranates. The Meshech Chachma poses a question: why only these 3? In reality, all the 7 species that Israel is praised to have are required to bring bikurim. So why doesn't the Mishnah only take these 3 and not the other 4? And the Meshech Chachma responds. He says, if you look in the Torah, when the Meraglim, when the spies were sent out to bring back a report from Israel, bring back some of the fruit, they brought back only these 3: the figs, cluster of grapes, and pomegranates. But what happened? Because of the report that they brought back, and they claimed the fruit was too big, people decided, we don't want to go there to Israel. And because of that, they had to wander 40 years in the desert. So this is trying to tell us, don't be like them. When you take these first fruits, and basically these 3 that caused us to wander in the desert for 40 years, proclaim them as Bikurim. These are extremely important and have a love for Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Shimon Omer, and Rabbi Shimon says, although you're proclaiming the fruit as Bikurim, when they're starting to bud, when you detach it from the trees, proclaim it again. These are Bikurim. Just one other particular Mishnah. It says, if one lives close to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, he brings the actual fruit. Could be figs, could be dates, it could be anything. But the ones that are far away, the time they'll get to Yerushalayim, perhaps the fruit will become rotten. So bring dry figs or bring raisins. And there's a whole processional that's done throughout Israel going to Yerushalayim. And the Mishnah explains that. And an ox leads the way. And they decorate the horns of the ox with gold chains. And they place a crown made from olive branches on the head of the ox. And the Khalil was playing before him. And by the way, according to what I saw, in the time of the Holy Temple, the Khalil was the loudest instrument at that time. So people would hear them as they're going to Yerushalayim and perhaps join them. And they come close to Yerushalayim. As they approached to Yerushalayim, they went in and said, they sent representatives to Yerushalayim, telling them that, we're coming, whatever particular city they're coming from. And they decorated their first fruits. And the leadership of Yerushalayim would go out and meet them. According to the amount of the people who are coming, it was a large group of people, a larger amount of people will go out in Yerushalayim to welcome them. If it was less, or a few people, less people would go out. And it was an interesting thing. Even those people are working in their stores. And as they saw this contingent of people coming in with their bikurim, they stopped their work, stood up, and gave them honor and welcomed them. And the Mishnah concludes, it says that the workmen stood up and welcomed all the people from that particular place. The study of this Mishnah given aliyah to our beloved Yisroel. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
The cantor who spoke at the funeral did a Kalmale. We'll do a Kalmale now before we make the Siyam. Okay. Want to do the other way? Let him do the Siyam first. Yisroel's brother-in-law is going to make the Siyam now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out tonight for the Shloshim, Shloshim Yaakov ben Abel Chaim. The last time I was here actually was in this room. It was a little over 2 years ago for Yair's bar mitzvah, and I have a great video in my phone here of singing with Yisroel at the bar mitzvah with my son David, and it was a beautiful occasion. I remember how happy Shirley was. It was in this room. I remember we were standing right at that spot where the mechitza was. And the first thing I was thinking about as I was preparing the Siyam, which was about a week or two ago, we were reading about the red heifer, the Parah Aduma, was that Shirley always would crack jokes and say, "Holy cow, where's Mo?" Right? he was always doing like Howard Cosell imitations. He was very into the sportscasting. Chavi and all the other siblings are very good at sportscasting. But so they always said, "Holy cow!" You can just imagine him saying that during that parsha. I'm assuming that was probably part of his annual vort when it came to that parsha. And he was the life of the party, you know. And I'm sure all I can think about were the happy times that we've had here in the shul. And I wish I was here more often for Simchas, and I wish I would have spent a dinner with the Einstadlers and experienced all those funny, beautiful Friday night meals together. But we have to celebrate his life and all these beautiful years that he gave to the shul. I'm going to basically, I want to thank everyone who prepared Mishnayos. We learned the whole Shas Mishnayos. It took a couple of weeks. I want to thank his friends for learning, Isaac and Mo preparing. We called his yeshiva in Providence. And Tichani had a couple of friends and their friends and family members that really, you know, put the pedal to the metal. We have the Rabbi from Emeritus. Thank you for learning, your son as well. And everyone really who prepared all the Mishnayos. It's not easy to learn a Shas Mishnayos over 30 days, but with a collective group, we could make this same tonight, and it should be for an elevated Lashama. So I'm going to read the last Mishnah, and you'll see how much this Mishnah, it's amazing how it's relevant to Shuli and his personality and the way he was. So the last Mishnah in Shas Mishnayos is Nuksin, and it's the third parak, the 12th Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchil lechol tzadik b'tzadik shlosh miot asara olamot, shne'amar, lahanchil ohavayesh v'otzotehem mamalei. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, lo masa HaKadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik bracha l'Yisrael el hashalom, shne'amar, adonai ozeh mo'itim lai v'rechet amo v'shalom. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, in the future, the Holy One, blessed be He, will bequeath to each and every righteous person 310 worlds. Shai olamos, we say. As the verse says, to bequeath substance, yesh, the numerical value of which is 310, to my loved ones, and I shall fill their treasuries. We say, I heard a vort on this, I'm not sure which rabbi says this, but if you're a tzaddik, you inherit 310 worlds. So there was a tzaddik. Mishnayos start within Maseches Brachos, Me'imas according to Shema, the Arvis. Shema, the Gemashi of Shema is 310. So we start with 310 worlds. If you're learning Mishnayos, it benefits you that you can become a tzaddik by learning and applying this to your life. So 310 is the Gemashi of Shema. I know it's really like Gemashi. And Shai Alomas, you inherit the world. But listen to this: 310 worlds. Rabbi Shimon ben Chal said, the Holy One, blessed be He, found no vessel that can sufficiently hold a blessing for Israel. It says, Yisroel, machzik bracha Yisroel. What was his name? Yisroel. Save for peace. El HaShalom. As the verse states, Hashem will give strength to His nation. Hashem will bless the nation with peace. One thing I can tell you, we have, in this past week's parsha, we spoke about Korach and Machlokes. In the last couple of weeks, we spoke about Korach. And surely was not a guy about Machlokes. My Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss always said, you have to stay far, far away from Machlokes. Surely was one person who got along with everybody. Everyone loved him because he was not harboring bad feelings against anyone. He learned how to make peace with people. And this last Mishnah, the whole Shas Mishnayos, says clearly, Lo Masa Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha LiYisrael El HaShalom. Yisrael was someone who held this, was a man of Shalom. He was a man of peace. And he lives up to his name. He for sure inherited these 310 worlds. And we should, again, celebrate this beautiful life and to continue his legacy of learning to get along with everyone, have peace amongst each other, peace on the board, peace between all the shuls, and peace in Klal Yisrael. So we should, merit Mashiach. And now I'll say the Hadron, and then we'll say a Kaddish. Okay. Hadron Allah Shaf Mishnayos Hadron Allah Datach Allah Masechet Shaf Mishnayos Datach Allah Nashi Minat Shaf Mishnayos Lo Nashi Minan La Ba'aman Hadiv La Ba'aman Da'ate Here Some Lofanecha Adonai Eloheinu B'Avatenu Shetei Torah Chaim Emunatenu Ba'Lo Mazel Tehi Imanu Lo Ba'Chanini Bar Papa Rami Bar Papa Nachman Bar Papa Achai Bar Papa Abba Mari Bar Papa Rafam Bar Papa Rachish Bar Papa Surchal Bar Papa Ada Bar Papa Daru Bar Papa הרב נעלמן הנו דברי תורה אחד בפינו בפי עמך בישוב נהיה כולנו ונחם צאצאי עמך בישוב כולנו וישמח ולמדי תרדף לשמה אני ביתי חכמיני מצוותך כולנו יהי ליבי תמים בחוקך למען לבש ולעולם לא אשכח בקדך כיוון חייתני ברוכת אדוני עליני חוקך אמן 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 צל ואל. מודים אנחנו לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהינו ששמת חלקנו ביושבי בית המדרש לא שמת חלקנו ביושבי קרנות שאנו משכימים והם משכימים אנו משכימים לדברי תורה והם משכימים לדברים בטלים אנו עמלים והם עמלים אנו עמלים מקבלים שכר והם עמלים אינם מקבלים שכר אנו רצים והם רצים אנו רצים לחיי העולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת ושנאמר ואתה אלוהים תורדים לבאר שחת אנשי דמים וממה לא יחסו מהם אני אפתח בך. יהי רצון לפניך אדוני אלוהי שעזרתנו לסיים שעת ושנייס כן תעזרנו להתחיל מסכת הספרים אחרים ולסיים ימם ולמוד ולומד לשמור לעשות הקיים וקובלי תמות דרך ביבה ולזכות כל התנאים והאמוריים ותלמידי חכמים יעמוד לי לנו ולזרענו לשלוט המשתרתו מפינו מפי זרענו וזרע זרענו עד עולם ותהיים בי יתהלך לפניך אותך בשך בך תשמור עליך והכסות ההיא תציקך כבי ירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים אורח ימים בימינה בשמאלה אושר בכבוד ומאי עוז עמו ייתן ואני יברך את עמו בשלום יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו וילמד הוא עתיד להתאחד עתה ולהחיה מתיה ולעסקה יהון לחיי עלמא ולמבני קרתא בירושלים ולשכללה היכלי בגבה ולמעקר פחנה נכרע מנהרה ולעטבה פחנה די שמאי לעזרי וימליך קודשה בריחו מלכותי ביקרי וחייכון וימכון וחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה וזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. היי שמי רבו מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרום ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתלבש בקודשה בריחו לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בימיו יאמרו אמן. ישרה בהר רבנו ויעד תלמידיהם ועל כל תלמידיהם ועל כל מען ויעסקים באורייתא די ויתר הדין לי בכל אתר ויתר יהי להון ולכון שלום רב אחינו וחסד רחמים וחיים אריכן ומזון רביחי ופרקן וקדם עוון ושמי בערב אמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב ומשמי וחיים טוב עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
We're going to do a Kelmale and then we're going to participate in the Siyam. Neil.
You'll need a microphone. Hey, Male Rachamim, Shochein, Ba'meroyim, Amtzei Menucha Nechayena, Kanefei Hashechina B'mahalos Kedoshim Oteoim Kezoy Arakia Mazirim Lenishamas Harav Rabbi Yisroel Yaakov Ben Rebbe David Chaim Sheyalach Le'olamot Bavor שאשתו אמו אחוסו בניו ובנותיו חסנו חוסנו חוסנתו וקהילה עטרס צבי מוקיריו וידידיו מספר לילים ביד אזכרוס נשמוסו בגן עדן תהיימנו וחסו לכן בא הרחמים יסתירהו בסייסר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים אסני שמעשו וינוח בשלום על משכבו
Everyone, please join in the Sudas mitzvah for Yisroel, Shloshim, and the Siyam. We thank everyone for joining on Zoom. We're going to thank you for participating.